The restraints were cutting into his wrists, but the kid didn't seem to care. He sat there in the defendant's chair like he was waiting for a bus, occasionally glancing up at the three-headed tribunal with the kind of bored expression usually reserved for algebra class. The human designation, Counselor Vexthul shuffled through his papers with 6 different appendages. The human designation. Tommy appears to be 19 standard cycles old. Appears to be? Chief Arbiter Clonthar's mandibles clicked in irritation. Either he is, or he isn't. Well, humans age weird, Vexthul said defensively. Their documentation systems are primitive. Birth certificates, driver's licenses, something called a fake ID that makes no logical sense. Tommy yawned. Actually yawned. In a tribunal that had sentenced entire star systems to obliteration. Regardless, boomed Prosecutor Zethquin, rising to his full height of 9 feet. The human has committed acts of… Hold up. Tommy raised one shackled hand. Can I get some water? This is taking forever and I've got a thing later. The 3 counselors exchanged looks. In 4,000 years of galactic justice, no defendant had ever asked for refreshments. You have a… thing? Clonthar asked slowly. Yeah, my buddy's throwing a party. Nothing fancy, just beer and pizza. You know how it is. They did not know how it is. Vexthul leaned toward his microphone. The defendant will remain silent while we determine his fate. Cool, cool. Tommy settled back in his chair. Just, try to wrap this up before 6? I promise to bring chips. The prosecutor's eye stalks twitched. Your Honor, I move for immediate execution. The human clearly shows no remorse for his crimes against… Which crimes? Clonthar interrupted. The report lists 43 separate incidents across 9 systems, but half the pages are missing, and the other half are covered in what appears to be human food stains. Pizza sauce, Tommy offered helpfully. Sorry about that. I was eating when I filled out the forms. You filled out your own war crimes documentation? Vexthul's voice cracked. Well, yeah. You guys sent me the paperwork, but it was all in that squiggly language, so I just checked random boxes. Figured you'd sort it out. Silence fell over the courtroom like a lead blanket. Even the holographic stenographer stopped typing. Prosecutor Zethquin's 4 arms gestured wildly. Your Honors, this is exactly why humans are dangerous. They're unpredictable, illogical. They treat galactic law like a pizza order, Tommy suggested. Yes, exactly. Execute him now, before he corrupts our entire legal system with his casual disregard for… Silence! Clonthar's gavel came down hard enough to crack the bench. We will follow proper procedure. Vexthul, summon the historical expert. If we're going to execute this human, we need to understand exactly what he's done. A side door hissed open, and Professor Kilmora shuffled in, clutching a datapad and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. Ah, Professor, Clonthar nodded. Please provide the court with historical context for the defendant's alleged crimes. Of course, Your Honor. The professor activated his holographic display. I've prepared a comprehensive presentation covering the relevant historical events, cross-referenced with all available documentation and… Just show us the slides, Vexthul muttered. We don't have all day. Right, of course. Professor Kilmora tapped his pad. Beginning with the first recorded incident involving the defendant, which occurred during the Kethvar crisis. Approximately. The hologram flickered to life, displaying a crystal-clear image 3 meters tall. It was Tommy's face. Not similar to Tommy's face. Not someone who looked like Tommy. It was Tommy, down to the small scar above his left eyebrow and the slightly crooked grin that suggested he knew something everyone else didn't. The courtroom went dead quiet. Tommy looked up at his own image hovering in the air above him. Oh. That's embarrassing. Professor Kilmora blinked his 6 eyes rapidly. This can't be correct. The archives must have been corrupted. The Kethvar crisis was 83 years ago, and this human is clearly… He looked at Tommy. Then at the hologram. Then back at Tommy. 19, Tommy said cheerfully. Just like you said. Math checks out, right? But the professor's complexion had shifted to a sickly green that meant only one thing in his species: absolute terror. And that's when Tommy smiled. The smile wasn't threatening. That was the problem. It was the kind of smile you'd give a friend who just told a good joke, or your grandmother when she asked if you'd eaten enough dinner. It was a nice smile. It was also the same exact smile in the hologram. Professor? Chief Arbiter Clonthar's voice had dropped to a whisper. Perhaps you could explain the temporal discrepancy. Professor Kilmora's hands shook as he fumbled with his datapad. The archives, they've never been wrong before. The facial recognition protocols are military grade, cross-referenced with biometric data from 14 different agencies. Yeah, those things are pretty accurate, Tommy agreed. Scary accurate, actually. Remember that time on Proxima Station when he caught himself? Oh, wait. We haven't gotten to that part yet, have we? Prosecutor Zethquin's eye stalks had gone rigid. Human, state your full designation, immediately. Tommy, your complete designation. Tommy shrugged. That's it, just Tommy. Impossible. All human designations follow the pattern of given name, family name, often a middle designation for... Look, you want my birth certificate? It says Tommy in the name slot and N.A. in the parent slots. Guess I wasn't important enough for a last name. Vexthul was frantically typing on his console. Running expanded archive search for human designation, Tommy, with biometric match parameters. His eyes went wide. Oh? Clonthar demanded. Oh no. What do you mean, oh no? The wall screens lit up with file after file, each one bearing the same image. Tommy's face, sometimes younger, sometimes with different hair, occasionally covered in what looked suspiciously like blood, but always unmistakably him. Battle of Kepler Station. Tommy, age 16, standing in a pile of Vorthak war armor. The Titan base incident. Tommy, age 15, giving a thumbs up next to what remained of an orbital defense platform. First contact disaster at Wolf 359. Tommy, age 14, shaking hands with an ambassador while 3 different species fleets burned in the background. This is impossible, Professor Kilmora whispered. The mathematical probability of one human being present at every major military engagement of the past 6 decades is pretty much 0, Tommy finished, unless you factor in the obvious explanation. The courtroom held its collective breath. Which is? Clonthar asked, though he clearly didn't want to know the answer. Tommy's grin widened. Maybe I'm really, really unlucky, or... He paused for dramatic effect. Maybe I'm really, really good at this. Prosecutor Zethquin's 4 arms were typing furiously. Cross-referencing tactical analysis reports, casualty assessments, strategic outcomes. His face went from confident to confused to horrified in the span of 30 seconds. The human forces didn't just win these engagements. They achieved total victory with minimal losses in every single case. Minimal losses? Vexthul pulled up the data. The Battle of Kepler Station resulted in 0 human casualties and complete destruction of a Vorthak armada that outnumbered them 300 to 1. 312 to 1, Tommy corrected. But who's counting? Professor Kilmora was clicking through slides faster now, his academic calm completely shattered. The Titan base incident. Official reports claim a system malfunction caused the explosion, but witness statements... He stopped. Witness statements describe a single human infiltrator who disabled the entire facility using improvised explosives made from... He squinted at the text. Cafeteria supplies? The vending machines had really good wire, Tommy said nostalgically. And you'd be surprised what you can do with energy drinks if you know basic chemistry. Basic chemistry? Zethquin's voice cracked across 3 octaves. You destroyed a military installation that had never been breached in 4 centuries using basic chemistry? And a butter knife, Tommy added. Can't forget the butter knife. That part was tricky. The screens kept cycling through images. Tommy at a dozen different battles, always human, always young, always walking away from impossible victories with that same casual expression. Chief Arbiter Clonthar finally spoke, his voice barely audible. Human designation Tommy. Exactly how old are you? Tommy considered this. Well, that depends on how you count. Chronologically? Biologically? Or are we talking about the subjective experience of time? Because that gets weird when you factor in. Just answer the question. 19, Tommy said simply. Just like you said at the beginning. I don't lie about my age. The silence that followed was so complete, you could have heard a pin drop in vacuum. Finally, Vexthal cleared his throat. Your Honor, I move for immediate recess while we reassess the situation. Recess granted, Clonthar whispered. As the tribunal filed out in shocked silence, Tommy called after them. Hey, how long do you think this recess will take? Because that party starts at 6, and I really don't want to miss the nachos. The recess lasted exactly 8 minutes, which was 7 minutes longer than it took for every military database in the sector to flag the search query, Human Designation Tommy, as a Code Black security breach. When the tribunal reconvened, they had company. Lots of company. Your Honor, announced Fleet Admiral Kerthok as he materialized via emergency hologram, I need to inform you that this tribunal is now under military supervision. More holograms flickered to life around the courtroom. Generals, admirals, intelligence directors, and one very nervous-looking diplomat who kept glancing at Tommy like he was a live grenade. Tommy waved. Hey, Admiral, how's retirement treating you? Admiral Kerthok's mandibles went rigid. You know me? Kepler Station, right? You were the one who surrendered after I took out your flagship. Nice surrender speech, by the way. Very dignified. You... The Admiral's hologram flickered with interference. You were a child. Still am, technically. 19's still a teenager in most places. Professor Kilmora, who had spent the recess stress-eating his way through a bag of something that looked like caffeinated gravel, cleared his throat. If I may continue the historical presentation. No, said about 6 different voices simultaneously. I think we should, Tommy said mildly. I mean, you've already seen the highlights. Might as well get the full story. Chief Arbiter Clonthar looked around at the assembled military leadership. Is there any objection to continuing? The silence was deafening. Professor Kilmora's hands trembled as he advanced to the next slide. The Kethvar incident, as mentioned previously, began when a human exploration vessel encountered a Kethvar battle fleet conducting routine military exercises. The hologram showed a standard diplomatic contact scenario. Small human ship, massive alien fleet, the usual power dynamic. The human vessel was ordered to surrender for inspection, as per standard Kethvar protocol, the professor continued. The human response was... He clicked to the next slide. It was a text communication, displayed in both human English and Galactic Standard. Human vessel determination to Kethvar. Command. Thanks, but we're good. Also, your formation has a 17-degree vulnerability on the port flank that any decent pilot could exploit with a modified cargo hauler and some creative thinking. They gave tactical advice to their captors? General Vorthak asked, his cybernetic eye whirring in confusion. It gets worse, Professor Kilmora whispered, clicking to the next slide. Kethvar command to human vessel. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Human vessel determination to Kethvar command. Okay, but when this goes badly, don't say we didn't warn you. Tommy leaned forward in his restraints. Oh, this is the good part. The next slide showed tactical readouts from the Kethvar fleet. 23 heavy cruisers, 67 fighters, full battle formation, weapons locked on one small human cargo vessel. The slide after that showed the same readouts 15 minutes later. 23 heavy cruisers, disabled, 67 fighters, floating debris, and one small human cargo vessel broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was... Professor Kilmora's voice cracked. The message was a recipe for banana bread. My mom's recipe, Tommy said proudly. Thought they might want something nice to distract them while their life support rebooted. Admiral Kerthok's hologram was flickering more violently now. One cargo hauler disabled an entire Kethavar battle fleet. Modified cargo hauler, Tommy corrected. The modifications were important. Also, they weren't disabled exactly. More like temporarily inconvenienced. 23 heavy cruisers. Had a design flaw in their shield matrix that created a resonance cascade when you hit them with a specific frequency of electromagnetic pulse, Tommy explained patiently. Basic physics, really. I just happened to notice it during the sensor sweep. Prosecutor Zethquin had given up trying to speak and was just making small, whimpering sounds. The aftermath, Professor Kilmora continued desperately, resulted in the complete restructuring of Kethvar military doctrine, the resignation of their entire naval command, and— he paused, and a formal apology to the human vessel, along with a request for the banana bread recipe. Did they ever make it? Tommy asked curiously. The Kethvar don't have bananas, Admiral Kurthok said faintly. Oh, that's disappointing. It's really good banana bread. The professor was clicking through slides faster now, each one showing another impossible victory. Outnumbered fleets surrendering, impregnable fortresses falling to improvised explosives, entire military campaigns ending when Tommy showed up and pointed out obvious tactical errors that somehow no one else had noticed. The pattern is consistent, Professor Kilmora said, his academic training warring with his survival instincts. In every engagement, human forces achieve total victory through unconventional tactics, superior adaptability, and— he paused, looking directly at Tommy, and the presence of this particular human. General Vorthak's cybernetic eye zoomed in on Tommy's face. Human. Answer directly. Are you a military strategist? Nope. A weapons specialist? Nope. Enhanced in some way? Genetically modified? Cybernetically augmented? Nope. Just regular old me. Then how do you explain your presence at every major military engagement of the past 6 decades? Tommy considered this seriously. Bad timing, mostly. I just wanted to see the galaxy, you know? But everywhere I go, someone's shooting at someone else, and I've got this thing where I can't just walk away when people are being stupid. The courtroom full of the galaxy's most feared military leaders stared at him in complete silence. Finally, Chief Arbiter Clonthar asked the question everyone was thinking. Human designation, Tommy. Are you a war hero or a war criminal? Tommy's smile faded for the first time since the trial began. That, he said quietly, is an excellent question. The smile was gone, and somehow that was infinitely more terrifying than anything Tommy had said or done up to that point. Without the grin, his face looked older. Not physically older, he still looked 19, but there was something ancient in his eyes that made several of the holographic generals take an unconscious step backward. Professor, Tommy said, his voice different now. Quieter, colder. Show them the Proxima Station slides. Professor Kilmora's 6 eyes went wide. Those files are classified beyond my clearance level. No, they're not. Tommy turned to look directly at Fleet Admiral Kurthok. Are they, Admiral? The Admiral's hologram wavered. How do you— declassify them, now. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even an order. It was something else entirely, spoken in the tone of someone who was used to being obeyed without question. Admiral Kurthok's mandibles clicked nervously as he transmitted new authorization codes. Professor, you are cleared for Operation Dark Mirror files. The holographic display flickered, and new slides appeared. The first one showed Proxima Station, a massive civilian habitat, home to over 2 million beings from across the galaxy. A shining example of interspecies cooperation and peaceful coexistence. The second slide showed Proxima Station 48 hours later. There was nothing left but debris and radiation. The official report, Professor Kilmora whispered, listed it as a terrorist attack. Unknown assailants. No survivors. The unofficial report? General Vorthak asked, though he clearly didn't want to know. Tommy answered instead. The unofficial report was that 3 separate species decided to use Proxima Station as a testing ground for some new weapons. biological agents, nanite swarms, something called a consciousness shredder, that I still don't fully understand. His voice was perfectly calm, perfectly steady. 2 million civilians became lab rats. The next slide showed surveillance footage from inside the station. People collapsing, children screaming, entire families dissolving into component molecules. I was there for a science fair, Tommy said conversationally. 9th grade project on hydroponics. Won second place, actually. The judging was happening when the first wave hit. Chief Arbiter Clonthar's voice was barely a whisper. You survived? Survived? Tommy tilted his head. Admiral Kurthok, show them the emergency response logs from that day. The Admiral's hologram flickered as he accessed classified files. I don't think... Show them. New data scrolled across the screens. Emergency broadcasts. Evacuation protocols. Rescue ship deployments. All of it time-stamped to the minute. Response time to Proxima Station, Tommy read aloud. 43 hours, 18 minutes. By which time, as the professor noted, everyone was already dead. He walked closer to the holographic display, and the assembled military leaders noticed something else had changed. His posture. The casual teenager slouch was gone, replaced by something precise and controlled. But here's what's interesting, Tommy continued, highlighting specific entries in the logs. The first rescue ship to reach the station? The UES Determination. Captain Rodriguez, veteran officer, good man. His ship's log shows something curious. The screens filled with a ship's captain log, voice recording accompanied by tactical displays. Captain's log, UES Determination. We've reached Proxima Station. Jesus Christ. There's nothing left. Wait. Picking up a single life sign in section C7. Someone's still alive in there. Sir, that's impossible. Radiation levels. I don't care what's impossible. Prep the medical bay and get a rescue team ready. Tommy's voice cut through the recording. They found me in the hydroponics lab. Still working on my project, actually. Plants don't care much about radiation, turns out. How? General Vorthak's cybernetic eye was whirring frantically, trying to process the information. The station was completely sterilized. Nothing could have survived those weapon combinations. That's what I wondered too, Tommy said. So I spent some time researching, learning, figuring out exactly how those weapons worked, who made them, who deployed them. Professor Kilmora was advancing through more classified slides now, his hands shaking. The response was swift and decisive, he continued, his voice barely audible. Within 72 hours, all 3 species responsible had suffered catastrophic military defeats. Their governments fell, their fleets were destroyed, their homeworlds... He couldn't finish the sentence. Their homeworlds became object lessons, Tommy said simply. Empty object lessons. The final slide was a tactical overview. 3 star systems, each containing what had once been thriving civilizations, now marked with red symbols indicating uninhabitable, permanent quarantine. Human designation, Tommy, Chief Arbiter Clonthar's voice cracked. Did I what? Tommy stood up, and for the first time, everyone noticed that his restraints had been undone. Had been undone for a while, actually. Did I personally kill 3 entire species? Did I glass their homeworlds? Did I turn their children into the same kind of lab rats they made of ours? The courtroom was dead silent. No, Tommy said softly. I just told them exactly how to do it to each other. But Admiral Kurthok was studying the tactical displays more closely. Wait. These weapon signatures. They're identical to the ones used at Proxima Station. Very good, Admiral. Gold star. But that's impossible. Those species developed completely different weapon technologies. There's no way they could have... The Admiral's voice trailed off as understanding dawned. Unless someone gave them the blueprints. Tommy's smile was back, but it wasn't the friendly teenager grin from before. This one had teeth. Turns out, he said conversationally, if you understand how a weapon works well enough to survive it, you understand it well enough to improve it. And if you can improve it, you can teach others how to use it more effectively. The screens filled with new data, communication logs, weapon schematics, tactical advisories, all bearing the same source designation, Anonymous Educational Consultant. The Zephyrians got detailed plans for enhanced biological weapons, Tommy explained, pointing to the data streams, along with intelligence about hegemony defensive weaknesses. The hegemony received nanite swarm improvements, he continued, plus targeting data for collective infrastructure. And the collective got consciousness shredder upgrades, with precise coordinates for Zephyrian population centers. General Vorthak's cybernetic implants were sparking. You orchestrated mutual destruction. I facilitated education, Tommy corrected. I simply shared knowledge about weapons systems with the species who had already demonstrated their willingness to use them on civilians. What they did with that education was their choice. The holographic display showed the timeline. Within 72 hours, all three species had deployed their enhanced weapons against each other simultaneously. The result was complete mutual annihilation. But the precision required. Professor Kilmora was frantically calculating. The timing, the tactical coordination, the understanding of each species' psychology and military doctrine. Is what you get when a ninth grader spends 4 years studying nothing but war, Tommy finished. Turns out, when you're the only survivor of genocide, you develop a very focused educational curriculum. He walked to the center of the courtroom, and every military leader in the galaxy took a step back. You want to know the truth? Tommy asked. The absolute truth about humans and war? No one answered, but everyone listened. We're not naturally good at fighting, Tommy said. We're naturally good at learning. And once we learn something, we get really, really good at teaching it to others. He gestured at the slides still floating above them. Every battle you've shown here, I didn't win those fights. I just pointed out what was already there. The flaws, the weaknesses, the stupid tactical decisions that everyone was making, but nobody wanted to admit. His voice grew quieter, which somehow made it more menacing. Humans have a saying. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. But we've got another saying that we don't share with other species. He looked around the room, meeting each holographic gaze. Those who cannot learn from their enemies' mistakes deserve what happens next. Admiral Kurthok's mandibles were clicking rapidly. The other engagements, Kepler Station, Titan Base, Wolf 359, you were teaching them too. Different lessons for different students, Tommy confirmed. The Vorthak needed to learn about tactical humility. So I taught them what happens when you assume numerical superiority equals victory. The Kethvar needed to understand strategic flexibility. So I showed them how rigid thinking gets you turned into floating scrap metal. Wolf 359. Tommy's expression darkened. Wolf 359 was a lesson about the consequences of first strike policies. Some lessons require more dramatic visual aids than others. Professor Kilmora was frantically shutting down his presentation, but Tommy raised one hand. Leave it up, Professor. They should see this part. The screens filled with new images, peaceful worlds, thriving civilizations, species that had learned to coexist without conflict. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Turns out, Tommy said, most species are really good at not making the same mistake twice. Once they understand the consequences. Once they see what happens when they choose violence over cooperation. He pointed to the display. The Vorthak haven't started a war in 60 years. The Kethvar disbanded their military and became a merchant federation. Half the species in this sector now have mutual defense pacts instead of conquest fleets. And the 3 species that destroyed Proxima Station? General Vorthak asked quietly. Tommy's smile turned cold. They learned the most important lesson of all, that some mistakes don't allow for second chances. The courtroom fell silent, except for the hum of holographic projectors and the quiet whir of cybernetic implants trying to process what they'd just heard. Finally, Intelligence Director Ythura spoke for the first time. Human designation. Tommy, how many species have you educated? Tommy considered this seriously. Define educated. How many have you been involved in teaching tactical lessons to? Oh, that's easy. Tommy's grin returned, bright and cheerful and absolutely terrifying. All of them. The silence that followed was so complete that several of the holographic projectors started showing static from the strain. Chief Arbiter Clonthar cleared his throat, his voice barely audible. Human designation Tommy. Are you planning to continue this educational program? Tommy walked back to his chair and sat down, clasping his hands in his lap like a polite teenager waiting for class to end. That depends, he said cheerfully. Are you planning to keep doing stupid things? He looked around the courtroom at the assembled military leadership of half the galaxy. The question isn't whether I'm a war hero or a war criminal. The question is whether you're going to be smart enough to learn from what you've seen here today. Tommy stood up and stretched. So, he said, the easy grin spreading across his face. Are we done here? Because I really do have that party to get to, and my friend specifically asked me to bring chips. The good kind, too. None of that generic stuff. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Finally, Chief Arbiter Clonthar cleared his throat. The Tribunal finds insufficient evidence for prosecution. Case dismissed, Vexthul whispered. All charges dropped, Prosecutor Zethquin added, his voice barely audible. Tommy clapped his hands together. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. This was actually kind of fun. Educational, even. As he walked toward the exit, Fleet Admiral Kirthok's hologram called after him. Human designation Tommy. Will we see you again? Tommy paused at the door and looked back over his shoulder, his expression thoughtful. Well, he said, I'm thinking about taking some college courses. Maybe majoring in interspecies diplomacy or education. Haven't decided yet. The assembled military leaders exchanged terrified glances. But hey, Tommy continued brightly. If anyone wants to volunteer for a case study on peaceful conflict resolution, just let me know. I'm always looking for new teaching opportunities. He started to leave, then turned back one more time. Oh, and Admiral? Next time you want to put someone on trial, maybe check their student ID first. I'm actually enrolled at the Galactic University. This whole thing could have been a really awkward academic incident. The door hissed shut behind him, leaving the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy alone with their thoughts, and a professor who was quietly deleting his entire presentation. After a long moment, General Vorthak spoke for all of them. We should never have let humans in the room. But Admiral Kirthok was looking at the empty doorway with something that might have been respect. No, he said quietly. We should never have made them leave. Intelligence Director Yathara was still processing the tactical implications. A 19-year-old human just admitted to orchestrating the military doctrine of half the galaxy. Not admitted, Chief Arbiter Clonthar corrected wearily. Explained. There's a difference. Outside in the corridor, Tommy was already on his communicator. Hey, it's me. Yeah, I'm done. Started without me? Aw, man. Did someone bring salsa for the chips? No? Okay, I'll stop and get some. Oh, and grab some of those little cheese things, too. The trial ran long, and I worked up an appetite. He paused, listening to something on the other end. What? No, it went fine. Turns out they were more interested in a history lesson than an execution. Learned some stuff themselves, I think. Yeah, I'll tell you about it at the party. See you in 20. He ended the call and started whistling as he walked toward the transport bay. Just another 19-year-old human heading to a party with his friends. Behind him, through the security monitors, the galaxy's most feared military leaders watched him go and tried very hard not to think about what they'd just learned. Some lessons, after all, are better left unexamined. But deep in the classified archives, Professor Kilmora was quietly updating Tommy's file with a single notation. Educational status. Active threat level. Teacher recommended. Action. Pray he likes you. The file was immediately classified at the highest possible level and distributed to every military command in the galaxy with a simple accompanying message. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Do not disappoint. Tommy, blissfully unaware that he'd just become the galaxy's most feared educational consultant, continued whistling as he headed off to enjoy chips and friendship. After all, he was 19 years old. He had a party to get to.